Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and today I'm going to be talking about the difference between Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades and Wandering Heroes of Ogre. Somebody asked me on a forum that they were talking about how they follow the blog, and they said if it comes down to Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades versus Wandering Heroes, which one should we choose? I assume they scratch different itches, but I don't know how they align with each other. And so I think I'm just going to try to answer this off the cuff. I think that the short answer is Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is more pure wuxia, and it's more wuxia in the style of Gulong and of 70s Shaw Brothers and like real pure 90s wuxia films. If you're frustrated by games that say they're wuxia, but they throw in like a lot of fantasy elements, they throw in a lot of things that don't feel particularly wuxia to you, Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is a game intended to do that. It's a fairly simple system, at least in my opinion, in terms of the core combat resolution. And I think that it works very smoothly. It has fast combat. Wandering Heroes of Ogre, on the other hand, is more if you want wuxia, but you also want elements of fantasy. You want, if you're into classic wuxia, it'll have that, but it's also going to have a lot of things that you might see in a movie like Flying Swords of Dragon Gate. In fact, one of the reasons it's named Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate is because of, not just all of the Dragon Gate movies or the Dragon Inn movies, but that one in particular because it has a lot of that sort of, I guess you could say, fantasy adventure element to it. Also, if you like movies like Buddha Palm, things like that, things that get a little bit more into the fantasy realm. So, I mean, the big difference is Ogre Gate has, things like hopping vampires in it. It has magic in it, ritual magic, not like, D&D style magic, but ritual magic. It has magical items and objects, but it also has the Kung Fu. Now, in terms of the difference between the games themselves, they're built on a core system that's very similar. Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate is built on a system that we had used called the network system for a variety of games. Ogre Gate came out in 2016, and it's built all around Kung Fu techniques that have kind of been added into that system in a way similar to how we added magic to Sartorius, which was the game that preceded it. And it's a fairly crunchy game. I would say maybe medium to heavy rules, depending on how people categorize these things differently. I think some people might read Ogre and say it's rules heavy. Some might say rules medium. I think some might say it's somewhere in between. I would say Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is more rules medium light, at least in my opinion. They both operate on a skill system that uses dice pools. And so if you have one rank in a skill, you roll a d10. If you have, I'm rolling dice just to illustrate. If you have 2 ranks, you would roll 2d10. If you have 0 ranks, you would roll 2d10 and take the lowest. You always take the single highest result, except obviously in the case of no skill where you're rolling the single lowest. But you always take the single highest and compare that against a target number or against the roll that somebody else made. Ogre Gate is a fairly heavy character creation system. Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is a little more speedy. It still is a little bit involved, but it's not quite as involved as Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate. It also pares down a lot of the stuff. So there's 6 defenses in Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate. There's 3 in Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades. The skills are a little bit more simplified and streamlined. The skill system in Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is actually more in line with the skill system I used for another follow-up game to Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate called Strange Tales of Song Ling. In fact, a lot of the Strange Tales of Song Ling material you might be able to pull into Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades as an add-on. I haven't really explored that much. It probably require some adjustment, but you probably could pull some of those elements in. The other thing is, Ogre Gate doesn't have some of the features that Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades has. Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades has a particular way of approaching turn order where you have a talking and analysis phase, and that's kind of a key to getting the game to get that sort of standoff effect that you sometimes have in wuxia and in Western movies or gunslinger movies or samurai movies. And it's really important part of what makes Righteous Blood Ruthless Blade work. It also has rules for fire deviation, which Ogre Gate has in like a roundabout way, but not as smooth and directly connected to the genre as Righteous Blood Ruthless Blade. There's also drinking rules. The other big difference is Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is focused more on characters. Both of them have a Jianghu and both of them have sex and blah, blah, blah. But Righteous Blood really emphasizes the characters. And Ogre Gate emphasizes sex more. Again, both have, sex and characters in them. But the sex are more important in Ogre Gate, and in Righteous Blood Ruthless Blade, the characters are more important. Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is also set in historical China. You can set it in any period you want. It doesn't give you, a detailed breakdown of the history or anything, but it's set in actual China so that you can, have a campaign that's based on a wuxia novel or whatever that's set in historical China. So if you want to do, something in the Song Dynasty and the Tang Dynasty, whatever, you can do that. If you want to do the Qing, that's fine too. It doesn't pinpoint a particular era that you have to do, but it assumes that China is the backdrop. Ogre Gate has a fantasy analog that's, a fantasy setting. It's not, it's inspired by the Song Dynasty period of China, but it is not, it's not an accurate representation of historical China. It has a lot of cultural elements to it that are drawn from the history, but it is a fantasy setting. And it also is a fantasy setting that has dungeons to explore and, monsters and, all these other things. You can focus on the martial world element, but all that stuff is also there. The other big difference, I would say, is size. Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate is is like a 460 or so page book. Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is, I think, and it's a little hard because not all it's 270 maybe a little over that, I don't know. So Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is a bit more compact physically, and so I think it's also easier for people to pick up. The big advantage that Ogre Gate has is it has a lot of supplementary material because I've been putting out setting books and adventure books, so that's its big advantage. Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades, I think, is perfect for a GM who wants to run wuxia and they're willing to do their own campaign material. There are characters in the book, and there is a Jianghu that's presented, but the assumption is the GM will make their own Jianghu. So I like to think of Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades as it's perfect if you were excited about the idea of making your own Jianghu, which I think is half the fun of a wuxia campaign. So again, I would probably say, all things being equal, you should probably start with Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades. I want you to like both, and I don't have a favorite. I think that they both scratch different itches, as the person mentioned in their message. But I think that the Righteous Blood is probably the one that I would suggest trying first these days. On the other hand, what I would also say is Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate is a pay what you want. So you can go and look at the rules, and you can get a sense of what the rules are. And not only will that give you a sense of whether Ogre Gate is for you, it'll give you a better sense of whether Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is for you. Again, the systems are different, but they're built on the same core system. Righteous Blood just kind of jettisons a lot of the stuff that Ogre Gate has that it frankly doesn't need. Just to give you an example, there's a lot of additional rules. So the rules chapter is very long in Ogre Gate. There's rules for, in addition to Kung Fu techniques, there's something called combat techniques that are a whole other thing. There's, a lot of rules like that. There's a lot of detailed rules in terms of how combat works and things like that. A lot of how Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades ended up is kind of a reflection of how I ended up eventually running Ogre Gate over time. So there's a lot of rules in Ogre Gate that I don't really pay as much attention to these days. If they come up, they come up, and I'll pay attention to them. But if I were to sit down and revise Ogre Gate, I probably would strip down some of the things, and because what I realized in hindsight was just everything really revolves around the kung fu techniques. So those are really the most important thing. And if you can simplify all the stuff around that, that's probably easier. But again, that's not how it is. I'm probably not going to put out a revised book. So, and also I think a lot of people prefer the crunchier aspect to Ogre Gate. The people that are fans of it like that. So, it would probably be somewhat perilous for me to sit down and revise it at this point anyways. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, there are reviews out there. You can go and Google both games and you'll see reviews. I think that it's really about, do you want more grounded wuxia or do you want more fantasy wuxia? And then after that, what kind of system do you want? Do you want a medium system, a heavy system? When I made Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades with Jeremy, one of the things that we did was well, at least I did. I don't remember if Jeremy did this, but I was timing the combats because I wanted to see how fast combat was. And my goal was to get combat as fast as possible. And I feel like we achieved that. There are certain things that can cause combat to go longer than it might normally otherwise, but it's, I think, a fairly fast combat system. And the other game that I mentioned, Strange Tales of Song Ling, when I made that, what I did was I timed character creation because I wanted character creation to be super fast so people could come right back into the game if their character died. And so I think, honestly, between those three games, and Strange Tales of Song Ling is more if you like a Chinese ghost story and things like that. But between those three games, I think there's a pretty good range of material for different styles of wuxia campaigns. So, I mean, I would say check reviews out. I know you can't always see things on the shelves. Sometimes you can check the previews on the sales pages and things like that to get a sense. But an RPG is something where until you really play it, you don't necessarily know what it really feels like. So I get that people want more insight. I wish I could tell you what would perfectly fit your group, but it's really hard to sort of know, because I've noticed that some people really, really like Righteous Blood. Some people really prefer Ogre Gate. Some people don't like either. It really depends on the person. And the other thing that I would say is, and I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, but Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is it's a really glossy, well-produced book. So it's got glossy, full-color pages. It's, I think, very well laid out. It's got a nice, solid design to it. It's a better production value because Ogre Gate is something that was not done with the same kind of budget. So if that's important, that would also be a consideration for a lot of GMs. Their players are going to react differently to a book that's full color, glossy pages and laid out a certain way than a book that's not. Ogre Gate is all black and white inside. The cover is a beautiful color cover, but I think the interiors are all black and white. I like black and white, but some people are not as into black and white, so that's a consideration. And also, the layout is just a different style of layout because it's not done on glossy pages or anything like that. I think it looks nice, but it's a different style and it's a different production value. So, those are also considerations. If you try one and you like it, definitely let people know. That's the thing that really helps us. Written reviews are really useful. I say it a lot just because that's the especially these days, that's sort of the way that that word travels with these kind of games. It's not as easy. A single review on a forum or whatever is not. It doesn't have the reach that it used to have, or on a news page or whatever, So the more people talk about it, the better. But yeah, and also if look at some of the other wuxia games that are out there. There's a lot of games that cover different ground and cover the same ground in different ways, and everybody who runs wuxia has their own ideas about how it should work. I'm going to do a video on this, or a podcast on this in a moment. I probably won't be up for a week or two after this one, I'm imagining. But the you know there's so many different wuxia games out there now, and I think that if you can't find one that fits you and your group, then you might want to consider either taking an existing game and adjusting it in a way that fits your group, or maybe even coming up with your own game if you have the time and the energy. But again, I think I remember it used to be harder to find wuxia games, and now it's not that hard. There's a wuxia game for a lot of different flavors out there. So so I hope that answers the question. If not, I might address this issue again because I know it comes up a lot, and I don't really quite have my elevator pitch down on what makes these games different and which one you should go for. I like both games. I worked hard on both games, and I am proud of both games. So I wouldn't necessarily say pick one or the other, but I mean I think that they are different enough that hopefully the information I provided will help you make the choice. So I will let you go, and I will talk to you later.